All we've got to do now is to start pumping.
What is going on, everybody? We are live with the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. Thank you, everybody here joining me live on YouTube, and thank you, everybody watching the podcast on those audio feeds, Spotify, iTunes. Shout out to you guys as well. Also, a little shout out. One of my patrons got me this Joe Burrow Succo Pop. I didn't know what a Succo Pop was, or Funko Pop, not Succo Pop. That's probably some kind of candy. But anyway, I got my first Funko Pop, and I was trying to dig back through my DMs to thank whichever of you, if you're watching, got me the Funko Pop as a little wedding gift, but wanted to say thank you for the Funko Pop. Cool stuff. I feel like I'm a collector now. But anyway, today we have a really fun show. We are going to be recapping the wild card round games and previewing the divisional round games, and then we'll get into the Patreon mailbag. So a pretty straightforward show. We're going to be kind of going in and out of the reviewing, previewing. You'll kind of just have to go with the flow here as we weave in and out. Before we get started, this show is brought to you by my Patreon and my Patreon supporters on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. If you want to support the show, you want to get exclusive content, things like my TFG Draft Insider package where we've got a Kayvon Thibodeau film room up, we've got an Aiden Hutchinson film room up, hopefully going to have the first edition of my draft board up next week with the first look at some of those first round guys, first time profiling those guys and all that stuff. So if you want the draft content, head over to patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, where you can support the channel. A couple people in the chat also asking when Studs and Duds is happening. I have one team left to get through for the NFC, and then it's recording, editing. I would estimate that will be up either tomorrow night or Thursday. Yeah. So let's get into it, man. I'm excited for this show. We had our first weekend of playoff action, and honestly, there was a lot of games that weren't the best, I would say. They added the 7 seed, and I did not like it when they did it. I think I even made a rant video about how you're going to get these crappy teams going in, and I didn't like how only one team gets the bye. I just was never a huge fan of it. And, we'll get good 2 seed, 7 seed games in the future. But we really did not get those this weekend. And the Eagles surely were not a playoff caliber team. The Steelers, frankly, were not a playoff caliber team. Those 2 teams got slaughtered. But there was a slaughtering of a non-7 seed as well in the New England Patriots. So it's not just the 7 seeds getting slaughtered. But there was some good football to talk about as well. And I want to start with what was the most hot topic of a game, and that was the Niners-Cowboys game, obviously. And I picked the Dallas Cowboys to win this game. And after one drive, I was physically slapping myself in the face saying, how did I not think about this? Being a Mike McCarthy playoff team coming out uninspired and ill-prepared and flat, because we have 10 years of evidence of this happening. Meanwhile, you have the Niners who have done this to Mike McCarthy time and time again. It was from the first drive, it was like, wow, this was such a predictable outcome, and credit to the many people that did predict this. I really thought this Dallas team was better, and I think all of this talk about Dan Quinn and Kellen Moore as head coach candidates made me forget about who the actual head coach of the Dallas Cowboys is, and that is a coach that nobody takes seriously. I mean, for one, this team was ill-prepared, right? From an X's and O's standpoint, Mike McCarthy brings nothing to the table and has brought nothing to the table since about 2008, when maybe once upon a time he did. But no coach in the NFL has been carried by great talent. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers for so long. Now he comes in, he's got this amazing roster, and this is what he does with it. And I genuinely think, as I watch Kyle Shanahan and his team come out, and we're going to talk about the Niners as well, because it's not just like this was all about the Cowboys embarrassing themselves. But you look at Kyle Shanahan on the other side, and it's like those players respect Kyle Shanahan. They know what he brings to the table. And they go to battle for that person. I really think with Mike McCarthy, it's a case of he's a fraud. His players knows he's a fraud. He literally lied to Jerry Jones to get this job. You remember that? He in his opening interview, someone asked Mike McCarthy, because before he got the job, someone asked McCarthy, he was like, have you prepped for the Cowboys? Have you watched them play from 2019? And he's like, yes, I've watched every single game. And then in his opening press conference, someone asked him, like, was it helpful that you watched all of Dallas play? And he's like, I didn't really actually watch the Cowboys full season from 2019. You say what you say to get a job. And it's like, you're literally confirming everything we know about you as a fraud. I watched every game in 2019, and I wasn't interviewing for a head coaching job. It's not that hard to watch every play for a team. It just takes like 5 hours in a Game Pass subscription just to watch every play. So just incredible stuff that Mike McCarthy still is going to be a head coach in 2022 after everything we know about him, after they have 2 head coach candidates on their team that might be gone. And they could be stuck there seriously with Mike McCarthy, no Dan Quinn, and no Kellen Moore, which would just be, like, for Cowboys fans, that sucks. But this back to the game, like, the Cowboys was clearly, they were clearly unprepared for this game. And at the baseline of playoff football, you can have great X's and O's, you can have a on-paper advantage with your rosters, which the Cowboys did in this game. At the very baseline, you have to come out and be prepared to get punched in the mouth and be prepared to punch your opponent in the mouth. The Cowboys did not do that. They got ran all over, and especially they let that Niners defensive line that is a mishmash of Charles Omenihu, who was traded for a day 3 pick. You've got Arden Key, a cheap free agent pickup. Obviously Nick Bosa, but Bosa goes down in this game. DJ Jones, like, they got beat up front, and they're supposed to be this team of, supposed to be one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and they just didn't show up. And then you have Dak playing a terrible football game, and I really don't want to, like, spend this podcast bagging on Dak. I've been trying to say that Dak's not an elite quarterback. He needs more help than he got this weekend. He's not an elite guy. And if we want to get into that debate, we can. I think there's a lot of people that are way too high on Dak and his capabilities. But to me, this wasn't even so much about Dak, even though he did not play well. But I guess the way I view Dak, that wasn't the surprise to me. It was the lack of physicality. It was the lack of adjustments, the lack of ability to get CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper schemed up and get them going against a Niners secondary that, sure, they have a couple pieces, but you should be dominating that matchup. You really should. And they weren't. And I think it all comes down to the coaching and this culture being broken. And it showed after the game. It showed after the game that this organization's really sad. They should be out there on the podium saying, we let ourselves down. We are too talented for that to happen. And instead, they're out there blaming the refs because they ran a QB draw thinking they could spike it. And instead of Dak getting up and handing it to the ref, like we've seen countless players do in those situations. There's Twitter clips of Larry Fitzgerald running over, grabbing the ball, give it to the ref because the ref has to spot the ball. Your franchise quarterback should know that. And if he didn't, that's unfortunate, but that's on you. And he's like, oh my God, the refs screwed us. And then he's like, good, I'm glad that the fans were throwing crap at the refs. Like, come on, really? Of all the games to complain about the refs, this was not it. There was not a moment in that game where you watched it and you were like, wow, the Cowboys are getting screwed by the refs. Like, just stop. It was just a really sad, pathetic look for the entire organization from, coach to quarterback. The only one that wasn't embarrassing himself was Jerry Jones, where he came out and he was like, that was unacceptable. We're too good for this. And then he goes and embarrasses himself the next day by saying, we're not going to fire Mike McCarthy, which, that's a whole different tangent. And I'm sure we'll get some mailbag questions about that. It's a horrible decision to stand by Mike McCarthy. But, obviously the Dallas Cowboys embarrassed themselves as an organization. As for the San Francisco 49ers, it's a complete flip of that. There's a lot of pride in that win, and they should be proud. I mean, this is a team that was kind of down and out mid-season. They were a middling team. They had some good wins. They had some bad losses, kind of trying to figure out who they are with this new staff. You've got a quarterback dilemma, the fans calling for Trey Lance while they keep rolling Shanahan. They keep rolling Garoppolo out there. No one took this team seriously. Certainly no one thought they would win a playoff game, let alone get in. But here they are. They come out and they were clearly the better team in this game. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan's a big part of that. This is what elite coaching looks like. And this is why I thought it was so ridiculous, all the people coming for Kyle Shanahan, because we know he's capable of this. And I just feel like there's so many reasons you can point to, whether it's injuries or Jimmy Garoppolo not being a week-to-week consistent quarterback. That's why you're hoping Trey Lance can emerge. But Kyle Shanahan is that dude. This was an elite coaching performance from the outset of prepping the right game plan to attack your opponent's weaknesses, to motivating your team to come out and play physical and play fast, to the actual execution of that game plan and the play calling itself, where Dallas had no idea what was coming. He's scheming up double moves, getting the right matchups with Ayuk on Trayvon Diggs, something that, like I said, there was none of that with Dallas. There was no, twice in this game, Kyle Shanahan was like, I've got a good route runner in Brandon Ayuk, and they have a corner who's incredibly aggressive. So we are going to put him in positions to bite on double moves and roast him for it. Now, one of them turned into a huge game-changing play to Ayuk, and one of them, Jimmy Garoppolo, totally sailed. I think they punted on the next play. But, Shanahan is that dude. And it's funny to look back 10 weeks ago and say there was legitimate questions. I even entertained it on this show. Now, I believe I said, no, I would not fire Kyle Shanahan. I still think way too much of him. You need to at least see how Trey Lance plays out. Sure enough, he goes on this great playoff run. And whatever happens at this point, and we surely will preview that game against Green Bay here in just a second, but whatever happens at this point, this season was a success. You've pumped up Jimmy Garoppolo's value. Now we know what Jimmy Garoppolo is. He's exactly the quarterback I've been saying since people were saying you got to bench Jimmy Garoppolo. When I said, Jimmy's a little better than he gets credit for. He does some really nice stuff. And you saw some of that stuff in this game. It really was the full Jimmy Garoppolo experience in this one, where you love the quick processing. I thought he does, and in this game did some really good stuff with his feet and sensing pressure and avoiding sacks and picking up tough. I don't know if he ran for any first downs in this game, but he surely used his feet to kind of find throwing lanes and keep drives alive. There was plenty of that. He made a few throws down the field. He doesn't have this noodle arm. But what he does have is two defining weaknesses as a quarterback that I tweeted about this, but it is insane how consistent the Jimmy Garoppolo experience is the Jimmy Garoppolo experience, where you get all those nice things I just mentioned, but then feels like twice a game he's either airmailing a throw or throwing the ball to a linebacker. Now, in this game, he didn't necessarily throw it to a linebacker, but twice he airmailed throws that almost let the Cowboys back in this game. I don't think it didn't cost them. He is that quarterback that needs help around him, and he got help in this game. But he also did some nice stuff that you got to credit him for. I wouldn't say he had a bad game. He just had two of those moments that was Jimmy Garoppolo moments and a reminder of why they're excited about Trey Lance. But, Jimmy's value is pumped up. And I don't know how far this playoff run is going to go, but they're probably going to get a second-round pick back for him, which is not too bad considering all of the draft capital they gave up to go and get Trey Lance. But yeah, just so impressed by the Niners as an organization. And obviously, we've talked about all the stuff they did on offense, but you also got to look at the defense that played great in this game. DeMeco Ryans' first year defensive coordinator. I remember when he was a linebacker, like 10 years ago. So young guy, I think he's still in his 30s. And he came in with big shoes to fill, Robert Salah. And I think early on, he was figuring out his coaching style. I really think schematically and maybe as far as how he relates to these guys. But as we sit here now, their defense really came on. And especially when you look at their front four, which is really, in the case of the Niners, like a front nine. Obviously, they only play four at a time, but the way they rotate these guys, and I got to shout out Brett Coleman, who really kind of brought my attention to it, and it held up as the game went on. That Niners D-line plays as if they all have rabies, and I love that, and I love that analysis because it's so true. You have this mishmash of obviously elite talent in Nick Bosa and Armstead, high first-round picks, but you also have guys that have been on that roster for a while, DJ Jones and Contravious Street is doing okay. You got to credit the front office who went and got so many names here, but the kid from Houston, Charles Omenihu, awesome. Number 92, keep an eye out on him. Like, big, explosive guy. Arden Key, former 5-star prospect at LSU that never developed, ends up here 6 years later on the Niners, and he's, playing like he's got rabies. You've got all these guys. Samson Abukum, who has totally beefed up from his time on the Rams when he was like a flex hybrid edge player. I mean, he looks sturdy and powerful. They have all these guys that just fly after the quarterback. And, I mean, DeMeco Ryans lets them loose, man. They scheme up some really good stunts up front. They are a tough front to block. And they've also done a really good job with a secondary that, has not been good this year. They've had a ton of injuries, a ton of moving parts. But you look at Ambry Thomas coming along late in this season. Really talented young player that I liked a lot coming out of Michigan. Really rough start for him, but he's coming on. Now they get some of these pieces back healthy in the secondary. DeMeco Ryans has done a hell of a job with that defense. And that starts at the top, right? With Lynch and Shanahan, it couldn't be any more opposite as far as how this team came out and how well this culture shined through against the Dallas Cowboys. So that was a lot to unpack for this game. But it really was, to me, the most surprising outcome. Although the New England Buffalo was surprising. But the way that this game transpired, I think, it just had the most to talk about. I really do think so. So now I'm going to go ahead and preview San Francisco against the Green Bay Packers. And it's kind of fun to go from, and I almost think with the way people are talking about this game, there's this nostalgic PTSD effect seeing what the Niners just did to Mike McCarthy. I think there's this belief that the Niners are going to come out and make the Packers look like that. And I certainly think that's possible. And I'd like to think that this Packers team is above that. I think LaFleur, I think the players do take LaFleur very seriously. I do think they have the best coached defense that they've ever had in Green Bay after they've gone through a couple of coordinators that just weren't it. I do think that their coaching and their culture has transcended the point of the Niners coming out and punching them in the face. Now, what does scare me is that the actual players, I think, do match up really well for San Francisco. And I can see a world, and the schemes match up, because Green Bay runs as much dime and nickel packages as anyone in the league. They're not afraid to come out with 6 defensive backs, 7 defensive backs against, formations with 2 tight ends or 12 personnel, 21 personnel. They are not afraid to run nickel in those situations. And there's been games where they'll do it and they defend the run really well. For example, late last season, everyone thought the Titans were going to come in and pound them in the run game. They came out and ran nickel defense, and they held up and shut down Derrick Henry. But there's also been games where teams like the Cleveland Browns 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whenever that was, ran right down their throat. So I think the way that Green Bay, they have the players, right? I like Kenny Clark. I like Tyler Lancaster. I think they could use one more like defensive tackle type. Maybe that's Tadaro Slayton, who's come on a little bit late. I think they have the players. It's just from a scheme personnel point of view, they would much rather go with all these defensive backs. And if they do that, that is a situation where Kyle Shanahan and this Niners team that has maybe the best run blocking O-line in the playoffs, certainly alive right now. You've got Debo, who is, I mean, talk about this is a matchup to watch, by the way. You have the running back in the NFL, best at breaking tackles, Debo Samuel, and the best tackling linebacker in the NFL this year, Devondre Campbell, 2 first-team All-Pro players. Talk about a matchup right there. That's a huge thing to keep an eye on, is if the tackling prowess of Devondre Campbell, where he's only missed a couple tackles this year, can he wrap up Debo on those outside zones that they like to get him going on? I mean, that's a huge factor right there. But I do think if the Packers can come out and start fast and get ahead, I really don't think this game is going to be all that close. I think the Packers' defensive line that's getting Zadarius Smith back this week, with a secondary getting Jair Alexander back, if they're playing from ahead and Kyle Shanahan can't go to his scripted offense, I really think this is going to be a problematic matchup for the Niners. But I can still see a world where the Niners come out and start fast and get Green Bay reeling. I really could see it starting either way. Lambeau is going to be rocking. I do think this team is different. I think they have an understanding of what this team is capable of. I think they've come a very long way from the 2019 NFC Championship to come out and play better defense against this Niners offense. Now, the flip side of this is, of course, Aaron Rodgers and the Niners defense that we just gave a ton of credit to. And there's a huge difference between Green Bay and how they're able to attack matchup problems, and obviously Dallas, who had a really hard time doing that. I think Dallas did a really bad job putting CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper in a position to attack these corners. And when the Packers played the Niners week 4, Davante Adams got 15 targets, 11 receptions. I think he had close to 200 yards. They know how to get Davante Adams isolated. They'll put him in motion. They'll ISO him on one side. They make it very difficult for you to just straight up double team Davante Adams. They've learned a lot about themselves and how to do that. The other thing is Lazard's come on lately. Aaron Jones, if he's healthy, could he be a problem out of the backfield against a Fred Warner who's playing probably on a pretty bad ankle sprain? Randall Cobb is going to be in there this week. I think the Niners defense is going to struggle much more than they did against Dallas, because I think Green Bay knows how to exploit the weaknesses that the Niners do have. Because, they came out and balled out last week, but Dallas made no adjustments to attack Ambry Thomas on the outside or attack Emmanuel Mosley. And now you got Fred Warner on that bum ankle. The X factor, of course, is that Niners pass rush against a Packers offensive line that should be the best it's been this season, but we don't know what this unit's going to really be. David Bakhtiari, is he 100%? Left guard, you feel pretty good about what you got in John Runyon. At center, do they start Josh Myers? I don't trust Josh Myers. I really don't. I think Lucas Patrick's a better center right now. It looks like they're going to go with Myers at center, Patrick at right guard. Is he as good at guard as he is at center? And then right tackle, we don't know if it's Billy Turner or Dennis Kelly, but this line has never played together. So if they're seeing a bunch of stunts and you've got a rookie center in there to call out protections, there's a world where this Niners defense puts up a hell of a show. It's going to be tough. They are outmatched on paper, but I think they have reason to believe they can win up front at the line of scrimmage in this game and make things difficult on the Packers offense. So I do think the Packers win. Really the only way, I think it's either going to be a close game or the Packers win pretty convincingly. And it's the first quarter. The first quarter, the first Niners drive is what you really got to watch. Watch the line of scrimmage. Don't watch the quarterback, especially when the Niners are on the field, because the quarterback's really not important in that offense. Watch the line of scrimmage. Who's getting push? Who's getting off blocks? Third down. Who's getting after the quarterback? And that's going to set the tone early on. Just as, it's not a big take. That's every playoff game, pretty much ever. But I think in this game, given the history of these two teams and how the Packers have 8 new starters coming in for this game, what's the chemistry going to look like? Coming off of basically 2 weeks rest, do they come out and play hard and fast? Or do they come off soft and squishy and let the Niners set the tone? Because if the Niners set the tone, they can win this game. They really can. So I think the Packers win. But as far as confidence in who wins, I'm not super confident in it. Though I do think Green Bay has potential to win this one pretty big if the Niners can't control the line of scrimmage. So that's a lot of time in the Niners there. Let me just have a quick sip before we get into Rams and Cardinals here. So, excuse me. Monday Night Football in the playoffs. The Arizona Cardinals pull the Dallas Cowboys and embarrass themselves. Not a good football game. And this game did kind of go how I predicted. I said in the playoff predictions, this is a terrible, terrible matchup for the Cardinals. I don't like that they aren't an experienced playoff team. I don't like that the Rams have that ability to dominate the line of scrimmage. But it was even worse than I could have imagined. And walking out of this game, it's like, we know where this is going with Cliff Kingsbury. And we'll talk about Kyler. Kyler was not good in this game either, but we know where this is going with Cliff Kingsbury. When they hired him, the concern was he's a Big 12 coach that couldn't win in the Big 12. Not even like a Big 10 coach that couldn't win in the Big 10 or an SEC coach that couldn't win in the SEC. There's a stigma about the Big 12 that they don't know trench football, right? There's no physicality. It's all finesse. It's all pass the ball, spread it out, weird football. And through 2 years in Arizona, it's exactly what that team has been. It's been all finesse, no physicality. And they tried. They tried to improve that. They tried to get J.J. Watt. They tried to get Rodney Hudson in there. And things got a little bit better this year. The defense got a little bit better. The blocking got a little bit better. But overall, the concern on this team heading into year 3 is the exact same thing it was when they hired Cliff Kingsbury. And that is that he can't get the trench aspect of this team right. The physical aspect of this team. And then you have a 5'9" quarterback who's a finesse player that they don't know how to use. And it kind of embodies the, Kyler's play style where he's like, oh, we're just going to run around and wing it and make plays. That kind of turns into it permeates through the whole team. There's no plan. There's no execution and physicality on this team. And they've done some nice stuff, right? He does some creative stuff in the run game. They've done a good job with this roster. But when I see what Cliff Kingsbury does with this team, I don't think he's done a bad job. But it's not. I don't see where this is going. It just feels so likely that we're going to be sitting here next year and Kyler's not going to really be much better because the offense isn't evolving. There's really not a whole lot of adjusting that goes on in this offense. It's just a lot of throw the ball outside, run around. I don't think they lean into his ability as a runner enough. I think they're afraid to attack the middle of the field. Obviously, it's not Kyler's strength, but I think they're genuinely afraid to do that. And I just feel like it's so likely that a year from now, we're gonna have the same questions. They're gonna win 10 games or whatever. Kyler's gonna play pretty well, but inconsistent. This was by far his worst game on the year. That, by the way, this season we've seen some crazy overreactions to Kyler Murray out there these last 24 hours. And we're going to be having the same conversation of are they stuck in purgatory with Cliff? And it's crazy to say that after 2 years, they're already stuck. But I haven't seen the growth there. So I just can't stop thinking about what if this team head into the offseason with Brian Daboll as their head coach, whose scheme in Buffalo turned Josh Allen from this raw electric prospect into what we're going to see. Well, let's just say what we saw last weekend against the Bills, where he had quite possibly the best quarterback performance in NFL playoff history. Brian Daboll embraces verticality in his offense, something that Kyler is very capable of. He embraces the run game from the quarterback. He is outstanding at drawing up protections. His scheme is perfect for Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins and Rondale Moore. Defensively, you could get if you make this change, you could go get a Mike Zimmer. You could go get a Vic Fangio. Talk about igniting the physical presence. You have cold weather, blue collar Brian Daboll, who is one of the most aggressive play callers with a badass mantra, and one of those defensive coordinators. Because I know some people like Vance Joseph. I think Vance Joseph is a average defensive coordinator. I don't see a whole lot about his defense that makes me go, wow, that's awesome. I don't see a lot of player development. And most of their good players are like veterans that you already knew were good. The Zaven Collins pick, what the hell was that? They don't use him. They pissed off Jordan Hicks in the process. The secondary, no one's really developed all that much. None of your young pass rushers have developed. It's been Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt. They could get that too. I think Brian Daboll's pretty particular about where he's going to go. I think they could get Brian Daboll. I really think they do. They could. And maybe they're having these conversations. Maybe they're not. But I'm not going to be excited about the Cardinals next year with Cliff running the show, because I feel like they're going to stay as this team that we saw last night that they got beat, excuse me, and hopefully YouTube doesn't censor this. Parents, hold your kids' ears, but they got beat the fuck up last night. Line of scrimmage, everybody sucked. And I know Kyler didn't play well. Now, I'm going to do a film breakdown this week, hoping to get it done after Friday or whatever. I want to ask what happened to the Cardinals schematically. Was Kyler really that bad? From what I saw from the broadcast last night, he literally was just under pressure every play. Of course, he made a couple bad mistakes under that pressure, which you don't want to see. But I didn't see him with a lot of room to go with the football, and that offensive line looked like they got just absolutely beat to hell. Now, I'm really excited to get into that. And then, of course, on the other side of the ball, there's no pass rush. The Rams kind of did whatever they wanted with their defense. So, really just disappointing. J.J. Watt's obviously pissed. He chose to go there. He had bigger expectations than that. I mean, he might have had a better time in Pittsburgh this year playing with his brother. I don't know, but just super disappointing. And it left this kind of wow, we have a really long way to go as the Cardinals, because that didn't even feel like good playoff experience. It's not like they hung in there and they were close against a Rams team that looks really good. And it's all right, we got this experience. We know what we got to improve on. It's a couple things here, a couple things there. No, they're really far away. And even with Kyler, it's dang, he didn't dig us out of any holes. He kept getting worse as the rest of us got worse. So, yeah, it's really unfortunate. Now, for the Rams, wow. That was a hell of a performance by Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. For all of the ups and downs that the Rams have had this season, that's what they wanted, right? They wanted the quarterback that's going to come out, extend plays, throw missiles down the field, not make the same mistakes Jared Goff has made. Now, we talked about this with Stafford plenty. We know he's capable of that game. Is he capable of playing that game 3 more times now? That's what we're going to find out. But just the fact that he is capable of that game, that's why they go and make that move. Sean McVay, who is right there with Shanahan in my mind for just elite coach, game plan, inspiring teams. Kind of that same thing with McCarthy. Like, when Sean McVay talks, their players truly, genuinely listen. And when he tells you to get out there and go punch the Cardinals in the face, they're going to go and die out there for Sean McVay. And they did that last night. I mean, Cam Akers coming back from injury, like, they have that mentality of Sean McVay that he exuberates this confidence. And they trust him because he is such a great X's and O's guy on top of being a leader. It's really the pinnacle of being an elite head coach. Now, MD Andrews just sent in a very generous super chat. We're going to get into the mailbag at the end of the show, but thank you, MD Andrews, for the live support here. He's wondering what my 3 to 5 step plan would be for the Cowboys. Great question. We'll circle back to that. I will make a note right here, and I will get to this. You can come back later. We'll answer your question. Thank you, MD Andrews. But Cam Akers come out, just shows that toughness. Like, the Rams have that physical mentality that you need to win in the playoffs. And I think that's going to bode really well for them, as they got to head into Tampa, who brings that same energy. Just impressive from top to bottom. The Rams looked scary, and the last thing I'll say about them is that pass rush. Obviously, Aaron Donald, who reminded us last night that he's the best player in football. But Von Miller heating up. Jalen Ramsey doing his thing. Like, that defense has that star factor that just shined through last night, and they played a great game. They're scary. I want to talk about Philadelphia and Tampa Bay before we get into that game. So we'll come back to the Rams in just a few minutes here. But, Philly at Tampa, I didn't think this game would be close. I actually kind of perfectly nailed this prediction. I had Eagles. I had it 31-16 in my playoff predictions, and it was 31-15. So pretty dang close. I didn't think the Eagles matched up well at all in this game. I thought Tom Brady would pick the Eagles apart, and that Jalen Hurts wasn't really fit for the job against this Bucs defense that will dominate the run. What was so disappointing, though, I thought we would at least see, like, the Eagles very quickly be like, okay, we might not match up super well as far as what our strengths are against their strengths. And their strengths are better than our strengths. They're the Super Bowl champs. We're a team that snuck into the playoffs because we got to play the Giants and the football team and all these crappy teams, and we snuck in as a 7 seed. We probably shouldn't really be here. But what really pissed me off about the Eagles was, and I thought this was such a, not even pissed me off, but I think, like, what you'd be so disappointed about the Eagles in this game was you walked out of this game feeling so much worse about their future than if this game had ever even happened. Like, if this game never happened and there was no 7 seed, I would feel better about their future than I do right now, because we got a glimpse of how far away they are from being a real playoff team. Because you have a coach that had a horrendous game plan. And this might be a little takey, but the Eagles had a chance to win this game. There was throws that Hurts missed, and we'll talk about Hurts, who was terrible. But if he sees a few throws and he hits a few throws, and they adjust defensively, and they don't have Jalen Reagor fumble a punt, like, this game could have been a lot closer than it was. But the reason it wasn't was because this was like the worst self-scout job you could ever imagine. And I saw the celebration of Nick Sirianni in the locker room after they won the division, week 17. Got the wild card. And he's like, we know who we are. You're tough. You fight. And basically he's saying is we run the ball and, we just kind of play tough defense. Like, yeah, that's great. That's a good baseline. And they kind of did that this game. They did and came out. It's not that they weren't physical. That was not the problem. But the problem was they didn't look at the Tampa Bay Bucs and say, shit, this is the best run defense of the last decade. You don't run on the Tampa Bay Bucs. I don't care that you've got a mobile quarterback and a great offensive line. Teams have been trying it for 2 years. You don't run on the Bucs. You just can't do it. If you pass against them, you might have a chance. And it took them until the third quarter because they were down by 30 points to start passing. Now, I know it's garbage time and the Bucs let up and all that stuff, but if you watch early in the game, there was passing lanes to be had. There was no okay, we got to focus on Devontae Smith, who's really going off in this game. It was just a ton of early down runs into a brick wall, read options, screen plays, just exactly what the Bucs knew they were going to do. They played right into their hands. And then defensively, same exact thing. They matched up bad offensively, but they matched up defensively poorly as well because the Eagles have run probably more vanilla zone defenses than any team in the league. They don't really disguise a whole lot pre-snap. They kind of run what they run, and they try to play fast. The problem is you're going against a quarterback who probably has, if you want to look at the level of processing or the bar, no quarterback has processed defenses higher than the bar that Tom Brady's at right now. And if you come out and you're in a cover 2 alignment or cover 3 alignment, he knows exactly what he's going to get. He knows exactly where he needs to go with the football. And it's literally just going to be a practice on easy mode for Tom Brady, even without his top receivers, with his O-line banged up. That's what they did. Until the third quarter, they dialed it up a little bit, started running a little more man coverage. But to know, coming into this game, if they came out and said, we can't just run into a brick wall and we can't just run vanilla zone coverages, they actually, I think, may have had a chance in this game. I think the Bucs have a lot of warts right now, especially when you see Tristan Wirfs and Ryan Jensen get injured. Mike Evans is all they have. These other receivers really have not stepped up. Obviously Gronk as well, but just the receivers and the guys that can win matchups, because Gronk's not really like a matchup winner. And yeah, Brady just kind of picked apart that defense, and by the time the Eagles realized where their matchups may have been, the game was over. And it's just, that's super disappointing. We've talked a lot about matchups and stuff. Playoff coaches need to know where they can win matchups, and they need to know how to exploit those things. And there was none of that from the Eagles. So I think you walk away from this just super disappointed in this staff that we all know kind of overachieved this year. They have a lot to prove next year. I think they did some really good stuff. They refocused that team. But then you look at Jalen Hurts, and this was such an ugly game from Jalen Hurts. This was worst game of the year. Even worse than that Giants game. It's him missing throws and missing reads. There's the play that kind of went viral on Twitter where, I can't remember if it was second or third down. I think it was third down. Actually, I know it was third down. It's everything that's wrong with Jalen Hurts in a nutshell. He drops back, and he doesn't see what the coverage is. Now I should have wrote this down. Off the top of my head, I think what it was like a cover 6. So the safety went wide to cover the right side of the field. Now it could have been like cover 1 or something like that. But basically, he has a clean pocket, and his receiver, Quez Watkins, was about to scream open on a post. Literally, for a playoff game, as easy of a 60-yard touchdown as you'll ever see. Just running a post up the seam. Hurts has a clean pocket. The right side gets pushed a little bit, but the second he doesn't like what he sees, because that's a long developing route, right? That takes a little bit of anticipation to see that thing developing. But after 2 seconds from a clean pocket, he said, nope, I don't like what I see. I'm going to run. And if he just hangs and let alone the slow processing, but if his pocket presence, if he just hangs in that pocket a little bit longer, because that's what he does. He runs way too early. If he just hangs in there, he would have seen that come open, and it might have been a touchdown that makes this a football game early on. Now, if he whether or not he had the accuracy to hit that throw, that's a whole other question. There's the throw to Devontae Smith that got intercepted. That again, if they complete that, Devontae Smith roasts the corner on a double move. He's wide the hell open in the end zone, and Jalen Hurts takes like 3 seconds to let the ball go. By the time he gets it out, it gets intercepted. And if he had a stronger arm, maybe he makes that throw. He was spraying throw. It just, there's so many things to be critical of Jalen Hurts in that game. And, I tweeted 2 weeks ago when they made the playoffs, I said, I don't know what it means, but Jalen Hurts played a pretty good game. He played good enough for them to win. And I've said earlier on this year, he's a top 32 quarterback. He's a starter, quote unquote. But watching this game, you feel worse because it feels like, yes, he's developing, but it feels like he still has like 8 years of development to get to a point where he could win that game. There was so many flaws in his game that are from his tape. Like, it's not like it was just a bad game. He did that against the Giants weeks and weeks ago. He's done that on and off throughout the year. He's so far to go that you feel worse about the Jalen Hurts situation. So, I don't know what this all means. If I'm the Eagles, I think you have to spend one of those first-round picks on a quarterback, or you try and get in the market for, a Carr or whoever it may be. Kirk Cousins maybe is becoming available, something like that. And you don't give up on Jalen Hurts full go, but to just make him plan A, like the Broncos did with Drew Lock, for example, I think would be a really big mistake for this front office. And I think Howie Roseman's smarter than that. Howie's done a great job with this team, though the Jalen Reagor pick is always going to haunt him, and he was terrible in this game again. I think I've taken plenty of victory laps. I was not a Jalen Reagor fan. Little did I know how bad it was going to get. So, the Bucs, Teddy's having like a nightmare right now. Teddy, it's okay. He makes like the saddest little whimper when he's having a bad dream. The Bucs just kind of did their thing. They matched up really well. I was impressed by, it was a very Brady game. He took what the defense gave him. Nothing to be critical of him for. He made no mistakes. Well quarterbacked game. But to me, this was much more about just how far away the Eagles are from competing to be anything serious. Let's talk about the Rams-Bucs game that is going to be a bloodbath. I'm really excited for this game. It's a rematch. The Rams won the first time. Now, it was a good game. If my memory serves me right, the Rams kind of got out early and the Bucs kind of fought back. I could be wrong about that, but I know it was a good game. I think it was like 36-25, maybe. Brady played well in that game, but he had his receivers, and he had a healthy offensive line, which right now, this Bucs team is battered and broken. And it really has turned into, heading into the year, we're like, wow, Brady's got this unbelievable surrounding cast. But now it's like, if Brady does pull this off with this team, it would be incredibly impressive. Like, especially if Tristan Wirfs is the same. If he's beat up and, Tristan Wirfs came back in that game and got just abused by Ryan Kerrigan, and then they took him out after he had an ankle injury. If Tristan Wirfs is anything close to that player and Brady's under pressure and he has to make crazy throws and he's got Mike Evans getting bottled up by Jalen Ramsey, I mean, he's going to have to win this game with Tyler Johnson, with Gronk. The Bucs are going to have to show up and run the ball well, I think, with Rashad Vaughn. And, I don't know if Leonard Fournette and Rojo are going to be good to go this week, but The Rams' run defense is really impressive. I don't see the Bucs having a great run game. I really think the Rams' defense could have an even better game this week than they did against the Cardinals, because I can easily see a world where they say, all right, Jalen Ramsey, you got Mike Evans. We're going to pin our ears back against this beaten-up O-line, and I don't think anyone else can beat us. I could really see a world where Brady, and this is the thing with Brady, is like he doesn't have mobility. He could really just be a sitting duck back there, and there's nothing he can really do. He's going to figure out some ways. He's going to put some drives together. They're going to adjust. They'll have, Bruce Arians and Leftwich, great staff. Brady knows his counter punches. They will find ways to attack this Rams defense that does have holes. But I really think from a matchup perspective, with the way that Rams pass rush looked just last night, with the way Jalen Ramsey's playing and the way that Jalen Ramsey matches up with Mike Evans, by the way, Mike Evans is a good receiver. He's playing really well right now, but when he goes against a big-bodied guy like Jalen Ramsey, he's not a whole lot of ways he can win. So what I'm saying is I'm very surprised the Rams are underdogs in this game. I think the Rams offense has enough obviously preparation and talent to match up with this team. I think they're smart enough to know they're not going to run the ball great and to find ways to attack them on play action. You've got Cooper Kupp playing the way he's playing, Odell playing great. Like, I think they're going to find ways, but I think they're also not afraid. I think a lot of teams play afraid of this Bucs defense and are afraid to attack downfield, just like the Eagles did. The Rams are not going to play afraid. Matthew Stafford is going to let it loose. Odell is going to come free, deep. And I'm very surprised, honestly, with how beaten up the Bucs are. Now, obviously, if they had a healthy O-line and they had Leonard Fournette, who I think is a difference maker for that run game, and obviously if they had either Chris Godwin or Antonio Brown, if they had somebody else that they could go to when Jalen Ramsey's matched up on Mike Evans, I think this is a much different football game. But I just don't know if the Bucs are going to have enough answers. Like, they're going to close really fast. They're going to make this incredibly difficult on Tom Brady. And I'm just surprised. I'm surprised that the Rams are underdogs. I think, without giving up too much for my Patreon exclusive picks video this week, I think the Rams money line, obviously you're afraid to bet against Tom Brady, but I really think the Rams match up incredibly well. And I think people, with that spread, I think people are just afraid of the Brady effect, but it's like there's only so much he can do. Now, of course, because Tom Brady's out there, the Rams could fumble 2 punts and, that could happen. But I really think from a logistical standpoint, without the mystical Brady element, the Rams are scary right now. They're really scary. So that's going to be one of the better games. I mean, these games this weekend are insanely good. This is a really good slate of games. We're going to, I think, get treated well after a rough wild card weekend there. So let's freshen up real quick before we get into this next convo. Flambeau also asked a super chat question. I will be getting to the super chat somewhat soon here. We got a few more games to talk about, a few more games to preview. But, I mean, we can take a brief super chat question break before we transition to more AFC talk. So MD Andrews asked what a 3 to 5 step plan would be for the Cowboys. And unfortunately, we have to go off of Mike McCarthy is the head coach. It's hard to answer this because we don't know if Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn are staying, because that is huge from like a scheme point, like what players you want to go after. But I feel like from a roster point of view, there's not a lot to do. Maybe you cut Zeke and go get another corner or a defensive tackle. I think would actually be really nice for them. The inside of that D-line is really squishy. I do think cutting Zeke, like, it's time. He ain't it. Tony Pollard's better and cheaper. But other than that, like, cut Zeke, get a D tackle, and draft well. Now, staff-wise, we'll see if Quinn and Moore get head coaching jobs, but McCarthy's there, unfortunately. So there's just not a lot of different directions that team can go. They just need to man the F up. Like, maybe you need to bring Jason Garrett back to be a quality control guy to get this team to, you know, clap on. Like, at least Jason Garrett's teams played hard in the playoffs. The other super chat question we got: which receiver in the league do I think can have a Davante Adams-like jump in the next few years? One player that reminds me of a young Davante Adams a little bit, he's much better, but there's actually two guys that kind of fit this category. Deontay Johnson and DJ Moore. Both unbelievable separators, really good after the catch, hardworking guys, but both really struggle with hands issues. Davante Adams earlier on in his career had a hard time staying on the field because he dropped everything. So I think those are two guys, DJ Moore and Deontay Johnson, capable of becoming top 10 receivers that just need better hands. And that's a fun transition. And someone in the chat just said Jerry Jeudy, if he gets a quarterback. That's another player that that whole Denver team is just waiting for a quarterback. But that's a nice transition to the AFC now, where we are going to talk about New England at Buffalo. I had to do a formal apology on TikTok, which I do have a TikTok, by the way. I don't know if a lot of people know that. If you just search That Franchise Guy, I made this back like December time. But I did a shot for Bills fans at the bar because I did not think this was going to happen. And where I got burned was Bill Belichick and his defense. And that combined, thank you for the super chat, Mayhew. I will try to circle back to you. Again, I'm not in the super chat portion, so I can't keep answering these questions. I'm going to have to circle back to these because we got some topic stuff here. But it was a combination of Bill Belichick's defense being like, unlike any Bill Belichick defense I've ever seen, like no physicality. They couldn't tackle. They couldn't break up a pass. They had no answers. Now they tried to adjust, but no answers, which is just, that's not the Bill on Bill. Bill usually has all the answers, and he had none. And to be fair, when Josh Allen is playing like that, nobody, not even the greatest defensive mind in the history of football, has an answer for how the hell you defend that. Paired with his receivers catching everything. Just mossing Patriots D-backs left and right. So I think you look at the Patriots defense, really what was noticeable to me was the missed tackles. Like they couldn't wrap anybody up. And then that opened the door for this Bills passing game that deserves so much credit. And I am so excited for Josh Allen after that performance to get to go against Patrick Mahomes, because this is like obviously a legacy game, as any playoff game is for any big-time quarterback, but you know, nobody takes Josh Allen seriously compared to Patrick Mahomes because the consistency, the playoff success, Mahomes has just accomplished more, but this is the first time for Josh Allen to be like, no, I'm on that level and continue a playoff run. Like, this is such a big moment for Josh Allen, who's really just, it's consistent football away from being considered Patrick Mahomes. And this is a great opportunity for back-to-back weeks. Now, What's amazing is that the Bills literally got every possible yard available to them. They didn't punt. They didn't have a turnover. They didn't kick a field goal. They scored a touchdown on every drive. It was literally the best offensive performance in NFL history that's never happened. It was a show. And it was a pretty entertaining game just to see that. Like, they went off. And if they play like that, or even 80% of that, everybody's effed. No one's beating that team if they're playing like that. So, amazing performance by the Buffalo Bills. It was an FU night, really. Like, that was like the definition of like Bills Mafia. We're doubted. People are picking the Patriots, myself included. And it was like, nah, we ain't having it. We're going to win at the line of scrimmage. We're going to win at the catch point. Josh Allen is just going to be prepared and avoid mistakes and ball the heck out, contribute in the run game. Really impressive day for the Bills. For the Patriots, I don't think panic is necessarily. I think they need something other than the Bill Belichick factor, I think, at this point. It's still there. I still think Belichick's awesome. But he's not gonna single-handedly craft elite defense that's gonna win him a Super Bowl. And honestly, I like Mac Jones. I'm really impressed there. I like their offensive line, but they need really like skill talent. If they can get skill talent, Mac Jones take a step up in year 2, take a little pressure off that defense. I think they can continue to build something here, but obviously disappointing for the Patriots. But I don't think any like massive overreactions are necessary there. The last thing I need to say is that interception by Micah Hyde ended the game. I mean, I was at the bar at that point, and we were watching the game with some people, and they were like, "Oh, Mac Jones is." I don't think he said Mac Jones is terrible, but he was like, "Oh, what a bad throw by Mac Jones." And I watched the replay. I'm like, no, that was actually a hell of a throw by Mac Jones. Great play by the receiver to get open. But Micah Hyde just, sometimes an interception is just a great play by the defense. There was nothing wrong with the read. There was nothing wrong with the throw. But Micah Hyde just beelined it and made a great play on the ball. Like, he was open. He didn't underthrow him. It was just an amazing play by Micah Hyde. So, shout out to Micah Hyde, who did not get All-Pro. His teammate, Jordan Poyer, did. I thought that was fascinating. I shouted both those guys out in my All-Pro podcast last week. I personally think Micah Hyde's a little bit better than Poyer. They're both great players, so I'm not trying to take anything away from Poyer. I think they're both All-Pro caliber seasons, but maybe a little in his own mind, maybe a little upset that he didn't get it over Poyer. But yeah, Micah Hyde's awesome. Micah Hyde, what a play. And then we'll talk quickly about Pittsburgh, Kansas City. I know Steelers fans probably a little sad. People aren't really taking this game seriously. They fought. I kind of figured at some point in this game, I thought we would say, wow, Pittsburgh's putting up a fight. I don't know if that would be in the fourth quarter or in the first quarter. Things turned really quick for Pittsburgh. Things got out of control. They just don't. They don't have the room for error that the Chiefs have. Deontay Johnson, just the drops, killing drives. They weren't able to run the ball very well. They couldn't keep up with the Chiefs. Is what this came down to. But I will say that I think it's insulting that we even have to entertain questions on if Big Ben is a first ballot Hall of Famer. I do think that's insulting. I get it. He's been hard to watch. But look, he's had no offensive line. He should have retired a year earlier. He really should have. But the recency bias on even just asking that question, I think is insulting. And if I was a Steelers fan, I'd be like, what are you talking about? He's been consistently one of the best quarterbacks over the last 15 years. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings. He's a playmaker. He's done it in different ways. He's done it in offenses that are quick hitting. He's done it in explosive, high-octane offenses. He's been more of a game manager type. He has worn many hats. Now, he's not in the Brady, Rodgers, even Breeze category of like elite talents, but he's been an elite quarterback at times in his career. So I will say that for Steelers fans, that is insulting to even say, 5 years from now, he will have a gold jacket. There's no doubt. Just that I saw that a couple times and I was like, really? And then the Chiefs, this is a good transition to come back to Buffalo. I was really impressed by what the Chiefs kind of, I talked about this. Those of you that watch Studs and Duds, I was like, I feel like this team is kind of where they want to be. Obviously, they'd rather the 1 seed, but other than Tennessee, they get 2 home games. And they've taken this season, I think, especially offensively, to learn a lot about themselves. I think so many teams threw this cover 4 look at them that it was healthy for them to struggle early on, because you'd rather find out how teams are going to beat you earlier than later. And I think they've adjusted. They've really gotten the short passing game, the intermediate options. They've discovered some of these guys. Byron Pringle is a factor for them, right? Like, they lost Sammy Watkins, who was kind of a number 2 piece for them. He's a laughing stock. He's been a disappointment, but he was a legitimate number 2 option for them. And they've been looking for that. They tried it in Josh Gordon early on. It wasn't him, but like Byron Pringle has discovered his role in that offense. And another thing I said in Studs and Duds was, keep an eye on them. This was actually a really good call. I said, keep an eye on them to just straight up unleash Jerick McKinnon, who is a really talented player. We know he is, but can't hold up with a full workload. He never has been able to, back to Minnesota, to San Francisco. He's like 30 years old now, but we know when he's healthy, he's good. So Kansas City, who all year they've had this amazing run blocking, but they haven't had a great run game, or they haven't had these great running backs. Clyde's been hurt. The other guys haven't been, Gore's done well, but a lot of that is really good run blocking. There was so many times this season where they could have said, no, let's let McKinnon out of the cage, let him loose, and just hope he stays healthy. They could have done it so many times, but no, they had the discipline to be like, no, this is our secret playoff weapon. He's going to be our screen game guy. He's going to be catching wheel routes and flat routes out of the backfield, which is our great cover 4 beaters, by the way, to have a running back out of the backfield like that. And they just let him loose. And he is going to be a big factor for them in the playoffs. So that was really impressive to see that kind of happen for them. And that's obviously going to be a factor this weekend against a Bills team that's going to force the Chiefs to throw the ball underneath. They are that quarters-heavy style of defense. And I think the Chiefs have evolved so much throughout the year, understanding like how they're going to win underneath and play more patient. I know that's what everyone always talks about, but that's what we're seeing with the Chiefs. And that's a good transition to this game this weekend. Bills-Chiefs. I mean, I can't think of a more highly anticipated divisional round matchup. With the way these two teams are playing, the history between these guys has really built up. The Bills beat the Chiefs this year. The question is, can they repeat that performance? Can they repeat what they did last week? Can Josh Allen come out and be a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes? That's the question. I think they can. I really think they can. Neither of these teams are big like running teams. The interesting thing here too is the Bills really beat this team to beat the Chiefs. They're like, we're going to run quarters defense. We're going to We're going to force Mahomes underneath. We're not going to give up big plays. We're going to rush with 4 power rushing guys that can close the pocket. So did it work? Did this roster construction work? Now, they don't have Tre'Davious White, which sucks, but they've done a good job on the back end without him. And I think this is a really evenly matched game. The Bills have really blew me away last week. And it really just comes down to Josh Allen. I think Bills fans would say they're fine with that. I think most people would say it's 50-50. I think if Allen plays at his best, which obviously, I don't know if he'll ever play like he did last week. I'm not going to consider that his best because that was just like unrepeatable. But if he's the best version of himself, if he plays on time when he needs to, if he can be accurate and avoid mistakes, the Bills will probably win this game because I think their team is better than the Chiefs. But that's a hard thing to bet on. I mean, you really have to play a perfect game to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, and they're going to be pushed to their limits. I'm not even really comfortable making a prediction on this game because I'm right down the line. I think gun to my head, I would take the Chiefs because they're at home. But I'm kind of done doubting Buffalo either. I cannot wait to watch this game. And that brings us to our last review and preview. Raiders Bengals, fun game, first game of the weekend. This was like the Joe Burrow show. And the game was fine. Like I just my takeaway from this game is like this team in the city has just taken on Joe Burrow's swagger. And I don't want to overrate that. I've always kind of laughed about how a player can single-handedly like make the entire team better, but I think when you go as long as Cincinnati as a fan and as a team as they've gone so far without that like genuine hope of having a quarterback, like even back to like Carson Palmer, I don't think they felt like, and I was a little young, but I don't think they really felt like, okay, Palmer can put this team on his back and win a Super Bowl for us. To get that, it ignites a franchise. It's like what we saw with Buffalo, Kansas City. It ignites the whole franchise. And then Burrow himself, just the energy that he brings is like a whole nother layer on top of that. So the crowd was roaring. The team played physical. They did a pretty good job against the run and all that stuff. This week's going to be the real test as they go against Derrick Henry and the Titans. But that was the takeaway here, is that Joe Burrow is that quarterback. I genuinely think that, Burrow, Mahomes, and maybe Allen. I'm super impressed by Allen. I need to see the consistency from Josh Allen. Joe Burrow has been an elite quarterback now for like 7 straight weeks. I feel pretty good about him doing that next week. Josh Allen, it's like 1 week you get something close to what he did last week, and then the next week, like he can't find an open receiver, and he's just running around and can't make plays. But back to Burrow, it's like, I feel good about the Bengals winning a Super Bowl in the next 10 years because I saw Joe Burrow come out in a playoff game and ball the hell out, make plays, play on time. This was the Joe Burrow arrival game, in my opinion. Now, the Bengals have problems. The Raiders made it close. They're not a perfect team. But I'm gonna save the preview for the Titans game, or for just a second, because I need to talk a little bit about Whistlegate, and I need to talk about the Raiders, who deserve some time here. So the whistle thing, is a big deal. I get like the rules are rules crowd. I get it. I do. I understand being mad about it. But the way I look at it is the whistle did not have an impact on that play. I talked to someone that was at that game, watching it live, and they were like, yeah, no, the people there, like, they kind of agreed, like, that ball was going to be a touchdown either way. And in my mind, you were going to get a bad call either way. I would so much rather they get it right. Like, it'd be so much worse for them to take that touchdown off the board because some idiot ref, like, breathed too hard into his whistle than to say this idiot ref breathed too hard into his whistle so you don't get your touchdown. If it was more evident that the DB stopped or that he could have made a play on it, I would get it. But to me, when I watched that play and to other people I talked to, like, that was a touchdown either way. So that's my stance on it. Burrow made a hell of a play. Ball was on target. I don't think it's a huge deal. I really don't. Other than, like, obviously, how can we get these refs to be better? I'm not mad at the actual people. I'm mad at the process. How can we make this better? So that's just my stance on Whistlegate. It doesn't change how I analyze the game. I think the Bengals were the better team. But the Raiders really fought. And I think there's a lot of heavy thinking to do about the Raiders as far as, do you kind of reinvest in this core or do you kind of blow it up? Because I think you can make cases either way. And I think Carr was okay in this game. He was your kind of middling quarterback who needs help, who can win playoff games, but don't count on him to do it himself. I think the same aspects of the defense that showed promise, played well, especially Max Crosby. They've got a really banged up secondary that had to go against the best receiving core in the NFL, so that was a tough matchup for them, but they need talent in the secondary, obviously. But the same thing is, like, you don't have a quarterback that is going to elevate the offense. You really don't. And you kind of do need things to be perfect to win a Super Bowl with Derek Carr, who threw the ball short of the sticks on the final play of the game. Now, obviously, the play call there wasn't great. Hard to speculate. A lot of times in those situations, the coordinator will ask the quarterback what they like. Sometimes the quarterback, elite quarterbacks, Brady, Rodgers, I think even a Joe Burrow will be like, no, I don't like that call. We need guys going into the end zone. Like, hard to speculate, hard to really blame Carr for the play call, but the reality is he took his drop and in no pressure threw it short of the sticks into traffic. Like, it was ugly for the play call, but it was ugly for Carr too. Like, that is Carr's mentality, is like, he's not gonna extend the play if it's not gonna get him a first down a ton. And he doesn't have that next level awareness that someone like Joe Burrow has. So the question really is, do you invest in making this team perfect around Derek Carr? There's a world where that happens. They have some really cool pieces that they can build around. They got to fix the O-line, and they got to add a couple more pieces on that defense. But I don't think they're like, and you need a number one receiver without Ruggs gone now. That's a big blow. But I think in a year or two, it could happen. Or do you say that's pretty unlikely? We can get a first-round pick for Derek Carr right now and start this thing over and build around Max Crosby and, Renfro. I get, some of their the concept of paying Josh Jacobs to me terrifies me. Waller's getting up there in age and wasn't the same Darren Waller this year that they paid all that money. Their defense, a lot of their best players are a little bit older. Casey Hayward, Yannick's probably fine. I don't know. They're in a weird spot. I was surprised they fired Mike Mayock. To me, that signals that they're leaning a little bit more towards a tear it down deal as far as do they keep Derek Carr around or not. We'll see. If I was going to keep Carr around, I would have at least liked to give Mayock one draft to see, like, all right, this team's been a laughingstock. They've overdrafted players for 4 or 5 years. But was it Gruden? Shorter than 4 or 5, like 3 years. Was it Gruden or Mayock? Because Mayock, I would think as the draft goes on, you credit Mayock for finding Max Crosby, for finding Hunter Renfroe, and all these guys. Whereas the early round guys, I would think that's more Gruden, pulling those guys in and saying, I really like him. That's speculation, but I would have at least liked to see what one Mike Mayock draft would look like. Mayock also drafted Divine Diablo this year. He's really good. But they're in a very weird spot. They're going to have one of the more fascinating off seasons, I think. And then we just have a preview of the Bengals-Titans game, and then we'll do mailbag here. So there's one big question in this game for me, and that is, can the Bengals stop the run? And that's a lazy way to look at this, but I really think the Bengals have a very good chance in this game. I don't mind how they match up with this team either. Because I think offensively, the Bengals will have some success. They'll have some drives killed by sacks by Tennessee. I think they're going to have to get rid of the ball quick. They're going to have to get some good run after catch from guys like Chase and Boyd, and Joe Mixon is going to have to do well, like in the screen game and stuff. But I'm not really worried about that. I think those guys are so talented. They're going to get those things. I think they'll score 2 or 3 touchdowns, kick some field goals. I think they'll score on 4 drives in this game. Whether that's 17 points or 28 points, that's going to come down to red zone execution, but I feel pretty good about them having a solid day of offense. I think Burrow's that good. Tennessee's got they're playing great on that side of the ball. I don't think they'll shut out Joe Burrow. I think he'll get his. And then Tennessee, I think it really comes down to Derrick Henry. And not so much Henry. It's the line play. The Bengals got to show up on the D-line, and they got to tackle. And if they do that, you're going to force Tannehill to beat you. And I will take Joe Burrow with his offense, the way he's playing against Ryan Tannehill every day of the week. So I really think the Bengals have a solid chance here. I did bet on them to win on the money line. Titans fans are tired of me doubting them, but I don't see the Titans keeping up if they're not running the ball well. But they very well may. They very well may come out and just blow the Bengals off the ball. But with how hot that team is, they have some dudes up front. I think they're going to hang, man, and I think they're going to win this game. I really do. Keep an eye also on a Jesse Bates interception potentially coming down, jumping one of those legendary A.J. Brown crossing routes. I think the Bengals would be really smart to put Awuzie actually on Julio, because obviously the Titans love those deep crossing combinations off of play action. I think it'd be smart to basically say, okay, Awuzie, you've got Julio. Let's force Tannehill to win throwing to Julio. And Jesse Bates, come out of cover one, which the Bengals will run, out of cover one. If A.J. Brown runs the crosser, jump that shit. If he runs the deep post, go with A.J. Or just take the deep post every time and force Tannehill to hit that deep throw, which he's very capable of doing. But I'm going to take the Bengals to win this one, but it's not going to be easy. I think you're looking at like 21-20, 23-21. If the Titans win, I think it'll be close too. I think this is going to be a really close game. And now we've got the mailbag. So I want to scroll up and make sure we didn't forget any super chats. We did get one from Lord Deathwake. Thank you for the super chat. I was pissed when the Packers let Micah Hyde go, and I'm still pissed. Yeah, they didn't use Hyde very well. I thought them letting Casey Hayward go was a worse decision than Micah Hyde at the time. But yeah, they misevaluated Micah Hyde. They should have had him at safety the whole time. From Alex, Pats got destroyed by the Bills. Give me some good news on the Pats next year. It's not all doom and gloom. You got to find a receiver that's been something Belichick struggled with. But they, I think, need to get younger and faster on defense. I don't know if they'll win a Super Bowl next year. I'm pretty sure they won't, but there's way worse spots to be than a Pats fan. I mean, they played a terrible game, but they're not that bad of a team. They'll have a chance. And then also from Mayhew, in your book, are Rivers and Matt Ryan Hall of Famers? Also, Eli is getting in whether people like it or not, but would you vote him in? I would not vote for Eli. I don't think he was a Hall of Fame caliber player. He was a top 10 quarterback maybe once and never a top 5 quarterback. He wasn't a Hall of Fame talent. He played on Hall of Fame teams and had a couple good runs of games, but no, I would not vote him in. I know he'll get in. Phillip Rivers absolutely is. I've talked about this where Rivers and Ryan, well, let's just say let's start with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan entered the league like he was the first really good high volume passer to enter this passing league, where you can't hit receivers downfield. Teams are going for it on fourth down more. The passing game is opening up. Nickel defenses, slot receivers. The game changed dramatically in like 2008 to 2011 was really that turning point to be the modern passing league is the way I would describe it. And Matt Ryan entered like right around that time. So we haven't had a lot of 15-year veterans that have played their entire career in that time frame. Matthew Stafford's another one. So when you compare Matt Ryan's passing stats to like all time, like let's see, where is all-time passing yard leaders? I bet Matt Ryan's like top 10 easily. Yeah, he's 8th. Eli's actually 9th. Eli kind of entered in that same time frame. I guess that applies to Rivers as well. But the point I'm trying to make is 10 years from now, when we look back on Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Derek Carr, that's the quarterback Matt Ryan and I guess Eli Manning, that's the quarterback they were, right? But because, we don't think of those guys as Hall of Famers because they're in this passing league now. But 10 years from now, we're just going to look back on them and say, oh yeah, they were middling quarterbacks. But Matt Ryan, like his all-time stats look insane because the time he's entering the Hall of Fame or the Hall of Fame consideration is so in his favor. So I do think that helps like Matt Ryan get in. I think it helps like Matt Stafford get in. Now Stafford could go and have a great back end of his career at the Rams and just get it by achievement. But, I think Phillip Rivers was genuinely, consistently enough a top 5 to 10 quarterback to be considered a Hall of Fame guy. I don't think Matt Ryan ever was. So I guess that's my stance on it. I think Rivers is a Hall of Fame player that I would vote in. Matt Ryan, honestly, I think I'd vote in because he was ahead of the trend or whatever. He's the first one in. Like, there's really not a strong case for keeping him out. And Rivers is in for me. Rivers was really freaking good. Okay, from Autumn, from Super Chat as well, Joe Burrow, QB, and Jamar Chase wide receiver ranks. Burrow, for me, is in the cluster of, 3 through 8. Hard to, pinpoint it exactly. You got Josh Allen, Brady, Burrow. What do we do with Deshaun Watson? And, maybe Herbert is in there as well. So that's 3 through 8. And then Jamar is top 10. I don't think Jamar as a route runner is up there high enough quite yet. Tanner just said prime Cam or prime Lamar. Give me prime Lamar. Better runner, better passer. And now we open up the Patreon mailbag. Now we have a ton of these. So I don't know if I'm going to get through all of these. But let's just get into it. So from Patreon mailbag, again, guys, if you want to be able to submit questions to the show, we're getting so many of these great questions that I might need to actually pre-select them and pick and choose. And if your question's not good enough, I'm sorry you missed the cut. But for now, I'm just going to go down the list. So from Chase, head over to patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, by the way. If you want to submit these, I can't remember if I said that or not, but just $1 a month gets you access to submit questions. What team is the brightest future? Well, you're going to go straight to quarterback. I think you'd still take Patrick Mahomes over anyone, so Kansas City Chiefs. Quarterback is, above all, the most important thing, and Mahomes has the brightest future at that position. So still the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think Bengals and Chargers obviously are getting up there, and Bills. From Jade, how do you feel about Herbert's performance against the Raiders? Do I think Staley's timeout decision is a fireable offense? It's not a fireable offense, but definitely was unfortunate. I mean, Herbert that was maybe the most I've been impressed by Herbert in his career. That was a playoff game for Herbert, and he balled out. His team did not play well in that game, and he just made throw after throw after throw, third down, fourth down, on the freaking money. That was a huge performance from Herbert. I mean, you're pissed that you didn't make the playoffs, but to see Herbert play, for Herbert not to be the problem in that game, feels pretty good. I'm not convinced on Staley. I'm really not. I wasn't. I think that team has a ton of talent. I was not impressed by his defense. And offensively, I don't think they did a lot schematically that impressed me. So I'm definitely not convinced on Staley. I will say that. He has a lot of proving to me to do next year. I don't think he's bad, but from Keels, with everything that Don Martindale has done with the Ravens defense the last few years and getting the Ravens defense to play as well as they did this year despite the injuries, would you see him as a potential head coach candidate? Yeah, I mean, he's a super impressive defensive mind. I think teams have thought about him. I don't know a lot about his background. He's 58. He worked under, was it Dean Pease for a while? He took over in 2018. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it is, why they don't love him so much. I know he gets brought up. I wouldn't be surprised if he got hired. Maybe he just doesn't interview well, or there's something we don't know about him. But, I mean, his credentials, he has earned it as far as performance-wise. We also got some super chats here. Micah one criticism is the offense never really played well under Flores, and he couldn't seem to hire a competent OC. Do you think there's anything to that? Yeah, I mean, it's a flaw. You are in charge, as the head coach, as good of a defensive guy as he is, you are in charge of, you got to be the CEO. You got to put the right guys. You're only as good as your assistant coaches. He deserves criticism for that, but he did so good in every other department that, and their front office was so blah, that I would think that's not a reason to fire him, certainly. Especially if reports are he wanted Herbert are true, like, certainly wasn't him holding the offense back on that one. If you know what I mean. All right, back to Patreon here. Just want to keep an eye on the super chat. Alex says you can keep the podcast 3 hours long. I don't mind. I think my throat would mind. Start to get a little raspy around the 2 hour mark. From Professional Trader Fulham on Patreon. Thoughts on Byron Leftwich turning up to his Zoom head coach interview with a Jags teal suit? I think someone asked me that last week. But it means he's excited about the Jacksonville Jaguars job. I mean, not everyone's going to be excited about that. I don't look too far into that. I don't think the Jags look too far into that. I think he's excited about the opportunities. He wants to be a head coach, which I respect. I mean, he's a great candidate. So I don't know if that's the right opportunity for him. I don't think a young first-time head coach should necessarily be going to that organization, but it's good to know he's enthusiastic about the opportunity. From Patrick, do you agree with Washington's decision to give Rivera another year? I do. Give him one more year to figure the quarterback thing out. Maybe you can get a Carr or a Garoppolo or something like that. What if they brought Kirk Cousins home? That'd be something. But give him another year to get the quarterback figured out. Give him a year with a healthy Chase Young and that defense the way it's supposed to be. Rivera has his limits as a defensive head coach, just as pretty much every defensive head coach does, but he's a really good coach. And after everything that happened to them this year, I think you give him one more crack at it. Because it's not like the top candidates are going to be flying to that job. I don't think so. From Oscar, how would you rate Nick Sirianni's first year as a head coach? Relative to expectations, I think he did a A job. In a vacuum, they were a solid football team. Incredibly overrated. The fact that people thought, they can upset the Bucs. They didn't beat a winning team this year. Let's see them beat a winning team before we get excited about Nick Sirianni. I kind of had the rant early on that he needs to grow a lot as a head coach as far as game planning and adjusting. And it also took him 5 weeks to figure out that his team could run the ball well. I'm not trying to bag on him, but I'm definitely not oh my God, he's a top 10 head coach or anything like that. Super chat from Tanner. Seems like ever since T-Hop got injured, the Cards' play calling changed to short schemes. What do you think would be the best scheme for Arizona? I mean, I like the Dable offense. Let it rip. Verticals, creative quarterback runs, inside zone running out of shotgun. Brian Dable would be the ideal fit. He's it's like a modern vertical West Coast scheme that's just, Josh Allen doesn't have this brilliant processor, but because Dable's protections are great and his vertical concepts are great, it's easy for a quarterback like Josh Allen or Kyler Murray. That's what I want to see. From Izana on Patreon. Unlike years past, I've noticed that the Ravens' offense has become significantly better at playing off script. Meanwhile, their scripted play seems to be no good when playing against competent schemes. They seem to have no idea how to deal with zero blitzes, Truthfully, I prefer the hurry up offense to their scripted offense. I don't know who's at fault. Yeah. The Ravens offensive question is such a difficult dilemma. I've talked a lot about this. It's just such a big, difficult question because there's no doubt that Lamar's biggest strength is play action, play fakes, read options, boots, the Greg Roman scheme. There's really, to me, no doubt. I get what you're saying. Like, you can do some explosive stuff and hurry up, and it can look really good in those comeback situations. You know, Lamar does some really special stuff. But to me, like, evaluating Lamar, it's really a tough ask when you play defense the way they do, and they have such a good floor with that Greg Roman offense and the way Lamar does it. It's really a tough ask to say, let's fire Greg Roman and just go pro style. Because I don't think it's as simple as, okay, we start running curl flats, digs, slant flats. We just start running West Coast. I don't think it's as simple as you just go to that and Lamar takes off. I think there's a lot of risk involved there. I think there's a really nice baseline that Lamar thrives inside the Greg Roman offense. So I understand the Ravens are smarter than all of us. That's what we got to understand. If any organization has earned the benefit of the doubt, it's the Ravens. And Lamar is not where he's at right now without the Ravens. I really do believe that. So I get their hesitancy to move off of Greg Roman, and I actually think for a lot of the things they're right. For me, it's finding a better balance of pro style and Greg Roman, which I think they're still trying to figure out. It's tough. It's really tough. I also understand Ravens fans that are like, screw it, we don't have a high enough upside with this offense to win a Super Bowl, so let's just see if Lamar can handle it. I also understand that perspective as well. It's a really difficult conversation. I don't think there's an easy answer. From David, this was the question last week that I didn't really understand. So his question was, who do you think are the most appropriate fits as the joker position on both sides of the ball on each NFL team? And then to clarify, the joker position meant players like Debo or Isaiah Simmons. So he's saying like the hybrid guru for each side of the ball. So I think defensively it's got to be Micah Parsons, right? Cover linebacker / pass rusher, like he's taken that crown all the way. I think you could throw Derwin James into that conversation if you want to talk about a hybrid cover player, or maybe like an Antoine Winfield who can be a slot corner or a free safety. Like there's different positions, but those are three names there. And then offensively, I mean, Debo's obviously it for running back receiver. So I guess that's a good answer. There's not quite as many multiple spots on offense. Okay, from Julian. What was your college degree? I was a business management major. We didn't have a sports program, although I was the president of our sports management club at the University of St. Thomas. So that is where I got my connections to the industry. And then last podcast, you called Denver's O-line great when you were talking about Drew Lock. If I said that, I apologize. It's not a great O-line. It's a good O-line. I don't know what I said for sure, but it's solid. But he says, can you expand on your thoughts on the O-line? So left tackle, you have an elite pass protector in Garrett Bowles. Left guard, you have just a solid, balanced starter in Dalton Reisner. At center, you have Lloyd Cushenberry, who's like a most improved player candidate this year. He was one of the worst starters in the NFL at center last year, third round pick in 2020, really settled in as a pass protector. He's a guy with good acceleration off the ball. He's a good run blocker, but just really struggled with his footwork and pass protection. I was really concerned by him coming out with that stuff, but he has done such a great job developing that. Right guard, honestly, you have two right guards. You have Quinn Miners. Just go back to what I said about him in the draft. All that excitement still applies. Not a great pass protector right now, but as a run blocker, that dude is just stupid fun. And his character is just through the roof. And then you also have Graham Glasgow still on the roster, who's not bad. He has not been. They gave him a massive contract out of Detroit. He's been a disappointment, but he's not like terrible. And then right tackle, they've kind of had this turnstile of veterans. They've had Bobby Massey, who was fine. They've had other guys. To complete the unit, they would need a good right tackle. But like I would say it's a top 10-ish offensive line, 10 to 15. From Frosty on Patreon, do you think Stafford improves in year 2 of McVay's scheme? Yeah, I mean, getting to know the scheme never hurts. I don't think he gets worse as long as the playmakers are there. Now, if Odell leaves, well, they get Robert Woods back, but, maybe Rob Haven or Andrew Whitworth retires, he could regress for other reasons, but getting to know the scheme better will only help, certainly, especially for a quarterback that, like, he's made mistakes under pressure. Like, that could be, not knowing his second reads and stuff. Every quarterback's going to improve in year 2 of their scheme for sure. Thank you for the super chat, Alex. Very generous. Appreciate it. I used your fantasy football rankings this past year and smoked my office league. I wanted to share my winnings with you. Let's go! Glad they could help. Very glad they could help, Alex. Congratulations. Also, what offseason moves should the Bengals make to go from exciting dark horse to a top team? They're not far away, man. They really aren't. They still need a long-term right tackle answer and maybe one more interior piece. I still think offensive line needs to be the focus. But then your offense, you could be the best offense in the NFL next year if you go from, because they went from bad O-line to, they went from really bad O-line to just bad O-line, but they've also had some injuries. And if they can go from bad to just above average, that could be the best offense in the NFL next year. So that's my priority. And then defensively, a number 2 corner. They just don't have a lot of holes at this point. It's O-line and a number 2 corner. And you're really, they're in a good position to address those 2 needs and really, really take another jump up next year. From REA Beats, with Miami and Cleveland not showing the growth some expected in 2021, do you believe that a blow-it-up rebuild is a viable team-building strategy? Cleveland, hell no. Cleveland gets a run-it-back year. That season was ugly. Baker playing with an injury, the Odell situation. They really thought, the Odell that we're seeing right now for the Rams is the Odell they thought they could get this year. It backfired. They need a number 1 receiver. Both their tackles have missed most of the season. That secondary is super young but super talented. Cleveland needs to just run it back with everything they have. And even then, if they disappoint, I don't think you're talking about a blow-it-up rebuild. They have so many pieces. They just need to click into the right spots. Miami, I think, is interesting because what are your building blocks? Other than Jalen Waddle, great. Javon Holland, I think, is a building block. Other than that, your O-line is utter garbage. I think other than Robert Hunt, every single piece needs to go. I don't think you're counting on Eichenberg and Austin Jackson. You hope those guys take steps up, but you don't want to go into the year with either of those guys as your starter. So the O-line needs to be blown up. You have no running backs. Your receivers, you got Gesicki. Gesicki's a building block. You can build around Waddle and Gesicki. I would say that's not their problem. But then defensively, your two best corners are your two best players, Byron Jones and Howard. They're going to be 29 years old. You have a good run defending DT in Wilkins. Great. I just, with Flores gone, I think Miami is in trouble. I think Miami's in a lot of trouble. Yeah, Jalen Phillips showed some flashes, but I don't think he's a building block yet. From Josh, what were your draft takes on the top QBs from the 2017 class? Was that the Trubisky class? Because that was, I think, the very first year I did draft talk, so I was like very underdeveloped as a draft analyst. But was that the Trubisky class? Or was that even a year before? That was the year before? Oh, yeah. That was 2017. So that was the first year I did draft takes. And I had some pretty big hits and some pretty big misses that year. So I did say, so I got a lot of criticism. Basically, my grading system was really screwed up because that was at the time I was really Madden-centric. So believe it or not, my highest impact grade on that draft, I'll admit it, because it was my first year. I'm not ashamed of it. I've learned so much since then. But I did have Nathan Peterman as my highest impact grade, and I sorted my grades by like impact. And I actually think Peterman gets a little bit of a bad rap. Obviously, he's not good, but anyway, he did beat out Tyrod Taylor and start. But I did say that I wouldn't touch I thought Mitch Trubisky had bust written all over him. I said, if I had to draft, this is where I'm protected by the Peterman thing. I was like, I thought Peterman could be like a Matt Ryan upside type of dude. His college tape was really not bad. But I did say in one of those videos, I said, if I was drafting a quarterback in the top 10, I would take Deshaun Watson first. Watson would be my first quarterback off the board. And I did also have the Chiefs drafting Patrick Mahomes in one of my mock drafts. So the Peterman thing was screwed up from the get-go. But other than that, I liked Watson. I thought Mahomes was like very boomer bust. Didn't have an issue with him in the first round. And I really was not a Trubisky guy. Like, I laughed at the Bears when they took Trubisky. So, the Peterman overshadows that whole thing. But other than that, I feel like I did pretty good with that draft class. I also think I had Chris Godwin and Kenny Golladay over Mike Williams in that class. Okay, from Lions. How does it feel to never win a fantasy championship in my own league? You were just waiting for that, weren't you, Lions? I see you in the chat. You were just waiting for that. Look, I took some risks. They didn't pay off. Drafted Mike Thomas among some other guys. From Hunt, why did I not vote Chidobe Awuzie for my All-Pro teams? I definitely thought about him. There's only so many spots to go around. Maybe I'm caving into Cowboys fans on the Trayvon Diggs thing. It's hard with that many interceptions. When I do think with All-Pro, like, raw stats do play a factor. It's part of why I voted TJ Watt for Defensive Player of the Year. I do think raw stats do matter for that kind of conversation. But he was awesome. I don't know. I think he was someone I thought about for sure. I think he's a better corner than Trayvon Diggs. I think he had a better year than Trayvon Diggs. But, again, the raw stats, it's just tough. From Ash, what do you attribute to the turnout of the Lions offense in the second half of the season to? a lot of Lions fans see Reynolds as a factor along with Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson, the tight end who became OC in all but name, taking over play calling, and the return of Taylor Decker from IR. Our thinking is that the existing chemistry between him and Goff gave him the confidence to push the ball downfield, thus unlocking the middle of the field for St. Brown. Shout out to the UK, Ash. Oh, Lion says there was a legit question, not just trolling me for the fantasy thing. I'll go back to it, thank you. But I think getting Taylor Decker back is huge. Heck, getting Jared Goff back was huge because they were rolling out Tim Boyle there for a few weeks. I mean, St. Brown just became unlocked. I don't think they were truly making him a focal point of the offense like they were before. They were still learning earlier on in the year who their playmakers were. I think they learned, like, okay, St. Brown can really play. Let's draw up some more plays for him, which was a good thing. I don't think Josh Reynolds played much of it. I mean, you got a competent perimeter player, which is obviously good, but I don't think he's like a game changer. I think the Lions are a genuinely well-coached team. That's my main takeaway. And I'm excited to see what they do with more talent. Because clearly, like, the second they get some talent, they came up with some good stuff. Now, another thing is, like, their defense was getting slaughtered. They had a lot of come-from-behind, like, garbage time performance in there. Or in the Packers game, like, the Packers pulled all their starters, so I'm not looking too far into it, but I'm impressed by that staff. We got a couple more super chats here. Thank you for the support, guys. Can the Cowboys win a Super Bowl with Dak as their quarterback? Yeah, they can. I thought they could have. They had a shot at it this year. Dak is almost like in his own tier. Like, he's like prime Matt Ryan. I think is a really good comp for Dak. Really good quarterback. Not going to be the reason you lose, but more often than not going to be the reason you win. Got to have a really good team around him. And Matt Ryan came really close to winning a Super Bowl. It just gets harder when you're paying that guy a bunch of money to sustain these great teams around him. They have a window still for a few years to really have this team put it all together, but that's why sticking by McCarthy is even more shocking. Because the longer you have a quarterback like that getting paid this much money, the harder it becomes. Look at the Falcons now. Look at the Vikings with Kirk Cousins 4 years later. Like, it's just hard. Now, Dak's a little better than Cousins, but I think the gap there is way closer than most people would lead on. From Tanner, am I crazy to think that the Lions and Jets could make the playoffs next year? No, I don't think you're crazy, especially in the Lions case. I mean, you also got to remember the Lions, they have 2 first-round picks. They have all of the cap space in the world, and they get their 2 best players back. Frank Ragnow is maybe the best center in the NFL, and T.J. Hawkinson. So they not only have 2 first-round picks, have learned a lot about themselves, are well-coached. They have a, starting caliber quarterback. Jared Goff isn't a complete waste of space. I think the Lions have a shot. The Jets, the Jets for me, it's like I'll believe it when I see it. They're just such a, there was a graphic that the NFL tweeted out that was like how long every team has had to wait since they've been to the playoffs. And I think it was like the second longest wait was 2015. And then the Jets was 2010. Like, the gap between the second longest waiting team was the same. The gap between the most recent teams to make it and the 31st team was like 5 years. And then you have to go another 5 years since the Jets made it. There's so much shit that they have to fix organizationally. They have the roster talent and potential. They just got to execute it. From Lorenzo, that wasn't a super chat question or mailbag question. Just wondering where I'll post my playoff picks. I will have a video up this week, by the way, Patreon, for the playoff picks for the all-star level patrons. From Jack, weird hypothetical question, but I'm sure you know the story about Jerry Jones offering LeBron a contract during the lockout. How much would prime LeBron fetch in free agency, and would you pay it? I bet someone would pay LeBron like a 2-year, $20 million contract. And would I pay it? God, I would think really hard about it. I would need to see him, like, I would want him to practice, like, put some pads on. Let's run some team drills, because he'd probably play tight end for you. I'd want to see how he blocks, and I'd want to see him make some plays. Then I'd probably pay him, because an athlete that caliber with his work ethic, like, he's probably going to find a way to make it work. From Luke, have you ever considered breaking down film of classic quarterbacks? That might be a summer project, but it's something that I've always wished I had more time to do. But yeah, I think that'd be a really fun video, maybe a Patreon special to go do like a Montana film breakdown or something like that. I think it's time. I think it's time we do that, learn a little bit more about these old quarterbacks, because we get a lot of questions about them. Man, we got a lot of great mailbag questions. I don't think I'm going to be able to get through all these, guys. I am wearing down. We just hit the 2-hour mark. Been working on studs and duds since 8 this morning. Sorry, it's 5 o'clock. We put in a full work day today. From Honk Boy, with Miami completely falling out of the picture, what teams do you see most likely landing spots for Deshaun? I think the Eagles with all those picks. I think the Giants with 2 first-round picks. Those two, and I think the Broncos will make a move. I think those 3. Eagles, Giants, Broncos would be my top 3. Saints are the type of team that would find a way to make it happen as a 4th. Okay, back to Lions question. Who do you think the Lions should take? I've been thinking Kyle Hamilton since Tracy Walker is a free agent this offseason. I don't think Kayvon or Hutchinson are a must-take at number 2, and there are no QB options to take there. I haven't done Kyle's tape yet, unfortunately, but if you trade down, I would rather trade down than take Kyle Hamilton. I get what you're saying. Like, they did pretty good with that edge position. That's not necessarily their issue. Now, their pass rush isn't very good. If you have to pick there, I'm not taking a safety there. I would take the pass rusher. But I get what you're saying. Like, you've got the Akwara brothers. You still have Trey Flowers on the roster. You have Charles Harris, who's an impending free agent but played well for you. I get what you're saying. Like, edge isn't by far, like, probably their best position group outside offensive line. So I understand, like, the hesitancy. But I would rather take Hutchinson or Thibodeau than trade down, than take a safety at 2. But I think I'm going to call it right there. We stashed about 10, 15 mailbag questions. You guys are awesome with these questions. But thank you. Someone just got home. Teddy's like, come on, Dad, we got to get out of here. Teddy, hey. Come here. Say goodbye, Teddy. Goodbye. Go. But thank you, everybody, for watching. Great podcast. Thank you, everybody, for the live super chat questions. Your support is amazing. These live shows have been a ton of fun, and I hope you guys are enjoying them this way. If you're watching the audio version, you can now leave reviews on Spotify, so I'd really appreciate it if you're watching there, iTunes. The only way to grow the podcast version is for you guys to leave a review. Like YouTube, you guys subscribe, you like, it populates it. Literally, the only way for the podcast to like get pushed up the charts and for people to discover the podcast from the audio version is for you to leave a review. So even if you're just watching this on YouTube, it would really actually help me out. If you got a couple minutes, go leave a review on Spotify now. They have that, or iTunes. Would be a really nice favor to me. A little insight as to how to grow the podcast. So thank you for that. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you, Patreon. You guys are kick-ass. Sorry I didn't get to everyone's questions. Just didn't have quite enough time. I will try to get them in some format here. But yeah, thank you guys, and we'll see you for the next show. Enjoy Divisional round, and we'll see you for Studs and Duds in a couple of days. Peace out.